Uh, Now we can hear better. Well, first, talking about mobile accessibility, my examples today will be more about the iOS ecosystem because I'm iOS developer, but those examples are applicable for Android or any kind of mobile applications, and also most of them are applicable for the web. Just how we're going to achieve it technically varies. And the first thing that we need to know is what actually is the mobile accessibility. This is the way we create our apps so they can be usable by more and more users. And talking about this, we are talking about people with disabilities. So we can have different kind of disabilities like cognitive, motor, vision, or hearing. And the best practices or the good practices that we're going to review today are applicable for all of these kind of disabilities. Why we need mobile accessibility? Actually, my belief is that when we know better why something is important, it's easier for us and we are more motivated to find out how actually we can achieve it. And with that said, we have like 6.6 billion smartphone users in the worldwide today. But also, we have like over 1 billion people with some kind of disabilities. And we're going to answer 4 why questions. Why we need to use dynamic fonts, why we need to use and to be aware of what is contrast ratio and color blindness, and why is voiceover so important. So let's start with the dynamic fonts. What is the dynamic font? This is an option that the iOS give us to change the font size. And for some people, changing the font size, okay, I'm going to use this one because changing the font size, now it's better, could mean that we have like a smaller font size and we can have more content on our screens. But for other users, it could be just a preference to see better with a little bit larger font size. Though for some people, having a large font size is not a preference. It's like the difference between being unable to use the mobile phone or some concrete application, or it could be a little bit more usable when we have a bigger font size. What we have by default from the operational system is we have like 7 font sizes that we can play with. But even if we're not super happy with this, we can turn on the larger accessibility sizes, and then we will receive 5 more. And if our apps do something pretty simple, we can benefit a lot of this. So how technically we can achieve this is just by 2 lines of code. We need to select our text style, which in this case is headline, and then automatically we'll have the preferred font with its size based on this dynamic size that was selected from the user. And if we want to automatically adjust our font sizes in the application, we need to set this flag to true. And these are all kind of text styles that we can choose from. And as you can see, for example, the headline in the default style, we have 17 points. And for the first accessibility size, we have 28. And all of this is like automatically calculated for us. What are the good practices when we're developing our applications? So if see that from the beginning that some of the text sizes could grow in the future, it's pretty nice to make them dynamic. And also we need to think about using scroll views from the beginning, because at some point, having bigger and bigger font size, it will make us for sure to scroll the content. And it's far way easier to make it scrollable from the beginning than trying to refactor this on the later stage. Also, we need to try to avoid truncating text. And if we have any kind of icons, we need to try to make them scalable as well. Otherwise, it will be a bit weird. And also, if there is a need, we can change our layout of the UI so we can present our information better. So in this case, you can see these buttons with movement, stress, sleep, and nutrition, how we change the layout so they can be easily visible. And now we already know how to change the sizes and what's the impact, but also there are cases in which even if we have like a bigger font size, we can still have some issues with readability. And what is the contrast ratio about? In this example, on the left side, you can see 2.1 to 1, and on the right side, you can see 13.4 to 1. And this is exactly the contrast ratio. So it's kind of clear that on the left side, the text is a bit hard to read. Then on the right side, it's far way easier. And actually, there are different kind of guidelines. One of them is like the Web Content Accessibility Guideline, which is the worldwide guideline, and they define two standards. Actually, they have more than 70, but these are two pretty easy to follow. And the first one is AA standard, which is about the minimum contrast, which says that we need to have 4.5 to 1 for normal text, and then 3 to 1 for larger text or bold text. On the other side, we had this enhanced contrast, which is AAA. And in this case, we need to have at least 7 to 1 for normal text and 4.5 to 1 for large or bold text. Another thing that we can use from the operational system is the increased contrast. For some of you, maybe it's slightly visible, but maybe not visible at all. But here on the left side, we have a bit increased contrast. And this actually, for the people that have some kind of issues, like visual issues, could be a huge improvement. And this also is pretty easy to achieve. If we use the default set of symbols that the iOS ecosystem provides us, actually this contrast change is happening automatically. Another option, if we need to have some custom assets, we can provide any like PDF or SVG vector format, and then we can turn on the high contrast option. So in this case, we can set like a specific custom asset for this case where we need to have like a higher contrast. Now we have some rules to follow, but also we have different tools that will help us to audit our app. And this is the Accessibility Inspector, which is a built-in tool in the Xcode, which is the default IDE for developing iOS applications. And what it will do for us is like throwing all kind of warnings, so we can be aware what we need to improve. In this case, we have selected one label, journaling strategy, and the Accessibility Inspector tells us that we have contrast failed warning. So not only this, but it gives us some options how we can improve it. Another thing that it could give us as a hint is about do we have a dynamic text font in our screen, or maybe some of the buttons that we're using is smaller than needed, so it's really hard to tap. Another tool that is built in the Accessibility Inspector is this color contrast calculator, where we can play with the colors and also with the text size, so we can decide easily, is it okay or not for our application. Well, we have two things so far. We have dynamic fonts and contrast ratio. But the things are getting a bit more complicated when we start to use more and more colors. And for some of you, this chart could represent a red line, solid red line for this week, and also a solid green line for the next week. But maybe for some of you, it could be like this. What we can improve in this situation is to avoid using red and green colors together, and also blue and yellow, because these are the two most common color blindness types in the world. And not only this, but we can play a little bit more, and we can use some symbols. In this way, we can make the things really more differentiable. This is one of the tools that I found and I pretty like. Maybe there are a lot of these, but you can play with 2 or more colors here, and also you can select different palettes and so forth. But one pretty cool option is to apply different kind of color blindness, so you can be sure that at the end you're using some good colors. And not only this, but when you receive some designs from your design team and you're not sure is it good enough or not, maybe you can check it and talk more about this. And now after these 3 things, which are more visual, what happens if the people that are using our app are completely blind? So this, the voiceover is like the standard screen reader that the iOS ecosystem uses. And what is the screen reader about? It allows the people to experience our interface without the need to see it. So to be able to experience better and to understand better why the voiceover is needed, I'll invite you now to close your eyes, but like sincerely, not only with one eye, and to listen carefully what's next, and to try to imagine what you should be seeing in the screen. Are you ready?
Body pain. Sunday max fill. 1 image. Morning. Add underscore icon underscore button underscore final PNG button. N/A. Add your pain.
Okay. Now you can open your eyes. And maybe for some of you, it was pretty clear, but maybe there are some differences. And if you had hard time to imagine something like this, maybe the voiceover should be the thing that we need to think more carefully about. So, some good and basic principles. First of all, we need to add accessibility labels to all of our components. Otherwise, as you just heard, if we have a button, for example, which has any image, the voiceover will not read for you, this is add button. It will read the label of the image, which could be pretty weird. The next thing that we need to do is to not include the element type. The voiceover is smart enough so it can infer the element type, and if it's needed, it's gonna to read it. In this case, we have a button, and if we add the label like add button, it will sound like add button, which is kind of redundancy. But also, this is like the better option. Now we have add button. It's clear enough. We need to strive for pretty short but still understandable labels. So something like this could take really long time for the user to hear it and to decide what's going on, and should I tap this element or not. Something that could be better is to avoid the redundancy but still provide a good context about what's going on. And in this way, in this case, we have at pain level, which kind of give us more context that we're going to at some kind of pain level.
Add pain level button.
Better. So, if there is a case that you need to add something additional as an information, there is another property that you can use, and this is accessibility hint. What's good for it, that because the voiceover is going to read the accessibility label first, and then we'll make some pause, and then we'll read the accessibility hint. So as a user, if I'm with closed eyes, I can pretty easily decide should I skip it or not. Also, the voiceover is not aware about how your components are changing their state. For example, if my button is disabled, the voiceover will not be aware about this, and then we need to add it to the accessibility label. If we already added this pain level, this button could change to edit pain level button, and the voiceover will be not aware of this, so we need to take care of it. And also, the applications that we're using today are loading tons of data. And when we see such loading indicator, if you're iPhone users, it's pretty familiar thing, and we know that something is happening and we need to wait. But as a voiceover user, I cannot see this. So please add these accessibility labels to the animations that are meaningful, so we could give some opportunity of our blind or people with disabilities that some idea that something is happening. How the voiceover is working, actually. It reads the components from the leading to the edging, for the trailing edge, which for us will mean left to right and top to bottom. What we can do, actually what we should avoid to do, is
Labels
this one.
without grouping. Morning pain, evening pain, average 7, average 5.
So in this case, it will not be pretty clear which value is corresponding to which label. And 7 is about the evening pain or about the morning pain. If we need, in these cases, we can use elements grouping.
Labels with grouping. Morning pain, average 7, evening pain, average 5.
And this will increase significantly the scanning efficiency and the speed. And last of the why questions is why we need this from the business perspective. This will engage more and more our users, not because we will engage more and better the people with disabilities, but also it will improve your user experience and UI for the other part of the users. It will expand the market of your app and your product. And also, it will boost the public relations and the company's publicity. And one last question that we need to answer is why it's needed from the human perspective. And actually, we think about accessibility almost every day, or maybe almost every hour. For example, how we can purchase a food for the dinner tonight, or how can I pay my bills easier so I can save some time. But honestly, how often do we think about such questions in the context of people with disabilities?
How can a blind person pay the bills online? How can a person with limited mobility use public transport? How can a deaf person understand the news and cross the street?
So, it was a pleasure for me to be here and to share with you these simple but still powerful practices. And we have kind of a minute if you have any questions.
Okay, how do blind people actually interact with the application?
That's a good question. Actually, what's happening when you turn on the voiceover option, it starts to speak, and it's a user, like a gesture-based screen reader. So there are a lot of gestures, but like the most simple one is to swipe left and right to move across the different elements. And also, if you need to interact with some of the elements, you double tap. But also there are components that, for example, could have some additional actions, and you can swipe with 2 fingers or like rotate with 3 fingers. So there's like a whole guideline how we can use the voiceover.
Okay, another question?
First of all, a great lecture. Thanks for that. You mentioned about the automated scanners for contrast differences, and I would like to ask, do you know about any scanners that give an overall mark, or at least they can give suggestions for the groups of labels you just mentioned, or any other similar scanners?
But do you like, are you asking about mobile or overall?
I'm asking overall. But
Overall, I'm not super familiar with the web tools. While I was researching about the presentation, actually there are a lot of solutions about the web, and there are fewer for the mobile. That's what I found best for iOS. They had something similar for Android. But also, there are some paid solutions which analyze better and give you like a really good report. I haven't used them, but watched some like tutorials or demos. So I cannot recommend they're working good or not, but they promise that they're giving pretty good report at the end.
Thanks, we'll give them a try.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.